There are a wide range of mindfulness practices, different teachings, different meditation techniques, and also the word mindfulness, the term, is used in so many different contexts that it can sometimes be a bit hard to grasp. And so what I aim to do in this video is provide a frame for mindfulness that I'm hoping will help you partly clear out some confusion perhaps, and also help you create and craft a personalized mindfulness practice that is balanced. So let's bring to mind an analogy that is often used to describe mindfulness, and that is bringing to mind a picture of a bird with two wings. So the bird has the wing of insight and the wing of love. Now there are different words used for these wings, but I think insight and love really gets to the core of what we're aiming at, and also gives you perhaps a flavor or a taste of the aim of mindfulness practice. I think we can all relate to the power of these virtues, of being insightful, of having a clarity of mind, and on the other hand of having a compassionate and loving way of being. And the idea is that just as the bird needs both wings in order to fly, we need both of these aspects together in order to realize mindfulness, sati. So that is why we're engaged in mindfulness practice, and those are the virtues that we're cultivating. So that begs the question, how do we practice? Well, we practice insight through meditation. We use meditation practice to gain insight. In fact, the word vipassana or vipassana, which is a traditional Buddhist meditation technique, actually means, it's the word for insight. It means seeing into, a deep seeing into the nature of reality. And so to briefly explain the process of meditation, let's use another analogy. Let's look at our minds as a lens. It's a lens through which we look at the world. Now, of course, this lens will be colored by all of our personal experience, our past, our preconceived ideas, our heuristics, our genetic makeup. All of these things will affect and color the way that we see the world when we look through the lens. So normally we simply look at the world without reflecting, but in the process of mindfulness and meditation, what we're doing is we're dropping back and we're actually looking at the lens itself to start seeing what is really going on there, what's happening in our minds. So let's take an example. Let's say that you're angry, that someone or something has really triggered you and you're feeling this rage. And so normally you'd kind of identify with that anger and say that I am angry, and you'd act from that place of anger. Through meditation, what we're learning to do is gradually step back and look at the anger instead. We're making some room for that feeling to be there so that we don't get overwhelmed by it. And we look at the anger rather than assuming the identity of the anger and acting through the anger. So in this process of stepping back, of meditating, our mind begins to settle down, to stabilize. And this makes room for insights to come to us. We often start the meditation practice by becoming familiar with our breath, of finding an anchor point for our attention so that we can continuously renew our interest and our focus on the breath. And we work somatically, becoming aware of the bodily experience, our body awareness. And this can sometimes afford insights into the mind and the body and the connection between the two. And then we apply this same technique to other aspects, other domains of our experience, including thoughts and feelings, emotions, and so on. Eventually dropping all the way back and familiarizing ourselves with that which is aware. Allowing the contents of awareness to kind of drop into the background and gaining insight into the consciousness. So insight is not really like gaining certain knowledge or learning about something. It's more like a flash in which we suddenly see something that we didn't see before. So we might begin to become aware of ways that we've deluded ourselves, self-deception, or ways in which we misframed a certain situation. It suddenly clicks, it becomes clear to us. So as we practice these various meditation techniques, we're also applying certain attitudes. And this brings us into the second wing of the bird. So we're cultivating acceptance and non-judging attitudes. We're really training our capacity for equanimity, which is this stability of mind, this capacity to stay centered, to stay in our centered self, even in the midst of all the changes and the tumult that is going on inside our minds and in the world around us. And in addition to these attitudes that we're applying to meditation, this second domain of mindfulness, it also contains a whole distinct set of practices, which is often summarized as contemplation. So where meditation, again, is this process of stepping back, of looking at, of gaining deep insight into something, the process of contemplation is more looking out. It is applying new types of frames and then using those lenses to look out into the world. This is contemplation. And the way we typically train contemplation in the context of mindfulness is through a practice called metta, often translated as loving kindness. So this is a contemplation practice in which we set intentions. We work with recitations and visualizations in order to cultivate a compassionate and loving attitude toward ourselves, toward the loved ones in our lives, and toward an ever widening circle of compassion into the world at large. So these are the two wings of mindfulness, and I'm hoping that you're beginning to see how they require two distinct set of practices, and also that it becomes clear that you need both of them together. That insight without love, or vice versa, is not really a good recipe. That, returning to our metaphor, that a bird with only one wing can't fly very well. So in closing, I'd like to mention a third dimension here. And this has to do with actually bringing the wings closer together. Because we want to have a balance between the practice of meditation and the cultivation of insight and the practice of contemplation and the cultivation of compassion and love. We want to have a balance and be able to shift between seeing into the fabric, seeing the details, and looking up and seeing the bigger picture. We want to dynamically be able to flow between them, to not get stuck. That is what flow means, right? Because ultimately in our everyday lives, we want to be able to dynamically adapt to the environment and the demands that our lives place on us. We can find the right level of detail. We can zoom in and zoom out and really adapt in a better way. So there's a third set of practices that can help with this integration, and that is different forms of movement practices in which we coordinate our bodily movements with our breath. It's almost like bringing meditation into movement and bringing our practice into the moving world. So if you have, for example, a yoga practice or qigong practice or different types of breath techniques or breath work that you're doing, these are all wonderful ways to integrate the two wings more into a coherent whole, because that's ultimately what we want to be doing, right? We want to have the practice be a living, dynamic organism that is more than the sum of its parts, just like the bird is more than just the collection of parts, right? It's a living, dynamic organism. So I'd like to show some gratitude and give some credit to John Vervaeke, a cognitive scientist, for a lot of the concepts that I'm using in this explanation. So with that said, I hope you found this type of framing useful in clearing up some potential confusion, and also in helping you set up your own personalized practice, a practice of mindfulness that is balanced and integrated.